What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Waters. Welcome to No Life Till Metal. Going to be doing a top 10 video today. These going to be my top 10 albums that represent heavy metal. So traditional heavy metal. These are the albums, like if you met someone and he had no idea what heavy metal is and you played him this album and said, this is heavy metal. This album is the definition of heavy metal. That's kind of what I'm going to do here, the top 10 albums. But interesting enough, I had a discussion with somebody online, with several people online. It was a discussion on Facebook, this very same discussion, and people were like picking very odd groups for what represented heavy metal to them. It was, I mean, people were picking bands like As I Lay Dying and Demon Hunter, and nothing against those bands, but to me, those bands do not represent pure heavy metal. They are, you know, Demon Hunter's kind of new metal, metalcore, somewhere in that area. Definitely not straightforward heavy metal. Same thing with As I Lay Dying. They're just not, you know. So not thrash, not death metal, not metalcore, not any of those subgenres. Just heavy metal. And I grabbed 10 albums, but I got a few. Man, oddly enough, I contacted 40 people, friends of mine, whether they were either in bands or YouTube personalities, all metal fans, and asked them, give me one album that represents heavy metal to you. And which is odd because I had a hard time coming up with 10. I ended up got 15 records here, but they all gave me answers, and I got some great answers. So what's going to happen? I'm going to have two parts. Part one is going to be my top 10, and a lot of people agree with me, so I'm going to let you know those artists that did agree with me. But then I'm going to do a part two, and it's just going to be the top 15 that other people picked from other bands or YouTube personalities. Everybody from the Metal Theologian YouTube channel to the bass player from Trytan. I mean, I got all kinds of great answers here, so I'm gonna get right into it because I'm already 2 minutes in and haven't showed a record. So these are honorable mentions. Gonna go through them quick. Face Warning, second album. The Spectre Within, my favorite Face Warning record. Kind of the beginning of the progginess of Face Warning, but not quite there. But not the Iron Maiden worship of the first album either. They really found their sound here. John Ark, fantastic vocalist. Really, this album, front to back, represents true heavy metal to me. Can't talk about heavy metal without talking about Manowar. Yeah, I know they became kind of a parody of themselves over the years, but any of the first few Manowar albums could easily fit into this list, in my opinion. This one is fantastic. I mean, I always look, may each note I now play be a black hour of death to those who play false metal. And I love that kind of stuff. I mean, come on, it's just so 80s metal going on here. And that was my other stipulation, by the way. They needed to pick an album that was 80s or close to it. I mean, 79, 90, you know, somewhere between 79 and 90. And most people picked well in the 80s. So, Manowar, Hell in England. This one really could have been in my list, my top 10 list. The only reason I didn't include it is because it's an EP. But man, 4 songs, all 4 songs are very different. You got the speed metal, over-the-top heavy metal of Queen of the Reich with those powerful vocals from Jeff Tate. You've got the melodic moodiness of the Lady Wore Black, and you've got the mid-paced heavy metal of songs like Knight Rider and Blinded. Fantastic EP that really does, you know, embody that sound that I call heavy metal. You know, from the guitar solos to the vocals to everything about it, to the classic logo. Another one that easily could have been in my top 10, but I really had to pare it down. Gravedigger, German heavy metal breakdown. I'm gonna go through these quicker so I can get into the top 10. Man, I struggle between this one and One Vice at a Time, but I went with Headhunter. Gotta love the background vocals by Rob Halford on this one, on top of just the great songs on here. And finally, last runner-up would be Helloween, Walls of Jericho. You know, pushing speed metal at times, but really just straightforward German heavy metal. Fantastic album. All right, so here's my top 10, and they are in order for the most part. And the last, I'm going to say, last 3 or 4 are in that order, partially due to the amount of people that also picked those albums. Twisted Sister, Under the Blade. Now, this is an album I grew up with. They were a local band for me when I was growing up in the early 80s. They played the clubs locally. These guys were over the top awesome. You know, I know people know them now for their cartoonish, you know, videos from MTV. We're Not Gonna Take It, and I Wanna Rock, and the Price, and those are the songs people know them by these days. And they still, I hear them on. I don't listen to the radio much, but I hear that when I go into other offices, I hear people playing classic rock, and they still play those songs. But this was not that. This was fast, heavy metal. I mean, songs like What You Don't Know, Shoot 'Em Down, Sin After Sin, Under the Blade, Tear It Loose. They were fast, upbeat, straightforward heavy metal songs with just this great attitude, this New York attitude. And then you've got even slower songs like Destroyer, but they're just slow and heavy. Destroyer. I mean, it's just a great album. Represents heavy metal to me. Straightforward, traditional heavy metal. I can't show one without showing Saxon. And again, I had a hard time picking. Could have picked any of their first few albums. Decided to go with Wheels of Steel just because it's a classic album. Some people call these guys biker rock, whatever. The new wave of heavy metal from the early 80s, and actually the first album came out in 79. But this album came out, what, 1980, 81, somewhere in that area? 1980. And yeah, this album really embodies the sound of heavy metal, especially that British heavy metal sound of that time period. Motorcycle Man, Wheels of Steel, Freeway Mad, 747, a moodier song with a, you know, just kind of a mid-pace groove to it. Street Fighting Man, Susie Hold On, and then the fast, upbeat speed metal of Machine Gun. Again, this embodies everything about heavy metal to me. Great vocals from Biff, great guitar solos, just everything you love about heavy metal you've got going on with Saxon, Wheels of Steel. Now this next one, some people may disagree with, because I really told people stay away from thrash metal and those sorts of things, but to me this band is not thrash metal. But this is the third album from Raven, All For One. Now, frankly, I really struggle between this one and Rock Till You Drop. Rock Till You Drop has always been my favorite, but there's just something about this particular album that brought Raven to a whole nother level of awesomeness. First of all, it had a hit single on it, and it wasn't a big hit, but it was a minor hit for them in Break the Chain. But the whole album is just lunacy. I mean, we call them Raven lunacy, and that's exactly what this is. Again, new wave of British heavy metal, but doesn't sound like Saxon, doesn't sound like Maiden, doesn't sound like Venom, doesn't sound like Diamond Head. It sounds like Raven. Yet it still embodies everything that I love about heavy metal. It's got fast songs, it's got mid-pace songs, it's got great guitar playing, great guitar solos, over-the-top vocals. I mean, John Gallagher's vocals are just otherworldly at times. Very unique sound, too. You know, it doesn't sound like Jeff Tate, for example, or Bruce Dickinson. He sounds, or Rob Halford, he sounds like himself. So anyhow, Raven, All For One, easily in my top 10 albums that define traditional heavy metal. Hi, this next one maybe a little more controversial because it's not quite as popular as some of the others that I've shown so far. But HELSTAR. If you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know that I'm a huge fan of James Rivera. I think he's got that classic voice. I think he's every bit the powerhouse vocalist that guys like Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford and Jeff Tate are. This has got everything you want to hear from it. I mean, you've got the galloping songs, you've got the faster songs, you got the mid-pace songs, you got the moodier moments, you've got great guitar solos, you've got, you know, a pounding rhythm section. Everything about that traditional heavy metals is embodied in this record here. Burning Star, Witch's Eye, Run With the Pack, Leather and Lust, Dracula's Castle. Again, James Rivera, one of the best vocalists, greatest vocalists in heavy metal. Unfortunately, he's not known, you know, in the same circles as, you know, a Halford and Dickinson and whatnot. But to me, he easily belongs with him. Another one that embodies it has a classic vocalist, but Sanctuary. Yeah, this one, again, it has all the elements that I look for in traditional heavy metal. It's got a mixture of songs. It's got, you know, fast-paced songs. It's got the slower, moodier songs. Even a lot of these albums have a cover song on them. This particular one has a cover of White Rabbit from Jefferson Airplane. And That's not my favorite song on the album, but it's still a pretty cool version of it. Great dual guitar solos, you know, that's one of the things, or dual guitar leads. That's one of the things that I think traditional heavy metal embodies as well. It kind of took from bands like Wishbone Ash and Thin Lizzy, and they brought it in. Bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden kind of perfected that sound. And a band like Sanctuary also embodies that sound. Of course, you've got, you know, otherworldly vocals from Warrell Dane. Really, no other album he released after this one, Sanctuary or Nevermore or his solo stuff, ever had the over-the-top vocals that this album did. I remember the first time hearing Battle Angels and just being blown away by that song. Again, kind of a fast, speedy metal song. You know, I kind of rank it up there with songs like Queen of the Reich as just, you know, one of the top heavy metal songs of all times. Anyhow, Sanctuary, I've had this album forever. This is my original pressing that I've had for years and years. I think this thing's been recently reissued. Alright, so top 5. I got this little list here of people who agreed with me. Unfortunately, I really was shocked that nobody else but myself picked this record. Really was surprised. But this is Accept, Restless and Wild. I mean, you got the beginnings of speed metal and thrash on here with Fast as a Shark and that steady double bass beats. You've got, again, you've got the dual guitars, you know, the two guitar players playing off each other. You've got the fast songs, you've got mid-pace songs, you've got the slower song in Princess of the Dawn, you know, the slower, moodier song. Not a ballad necessarily, but it's just slower and moodier. Over-the-top vocals, Udo Dirkschneider. I mean, the guy is just insane vocalist. And if you don't know Udo, you're probably not into metal. But again, I could take this album and hand it to anybody who doesn't really know metal, pop it on and say, this is heavy metal. It represents traditional heavy metal to me. It's got everything to do with, you know, that I love about it. And I grabbed both copies because I love both these covers. You know, people are like pick favorites on these two covers. I think they're both fantastic. Love the burning V's, but I also love that live shot. I mean, that's just so classic. Except Restless and Wild. Easily could have been in my top, you know, could have been my top one. Any of these could have been number one for me. Frankly, I do have a number one. I picked it as number one and ended up being number one as well, but the amount of other people who picked it. So this next one, you might be surprised by this album, but let's see. I've got Greg Mackey from the Blackmore Rules channel on YouTube, Carcass John from the Metal Roundtable, and Greg May from Tyrant all picked this album as their number one, their album that represents traditional heavy metal to them, and that is Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. I can't disagree with them at all. This was in my top 10 list before I even asked anybody else. This was Black Sabbath rediscovered. End of the 70s, they were petering out. You know, Ozzy and the band were not getting along. This is a reinvigorated Sabbath. This is Sabbath reinventing themselves for the 80s and coming up with an album that is absolutely brilliant. The bass playing on here is just stupendous. Geezer Butler just outdoes himself on here. This is a bass player's album. And then, of course, you got Ronnie James Dio on vocals, one of the greatest vocalists in heavy metal. The guy who embodied heavy metal. Whether it be Rainbow, Black Sabbath, Dio, anything he did was just incredible. Yeah, Neon Nights, there's your fast-paced song. So you got this almost speed metal song in Neon Nights. You got, you know, the traditional anthem-like song in Heaven and Hell, a song that the band played for years and years and years, and then they named themselves Heaven and Hell for a while and toured under that name. Not to mention the fact that Dio never stopped playing that song. Die Young, Lady Evil, Wishing Well, Children of the Sea. There's not a bad song on here. This, like I said, this album embodies heavy metal, and I totally agree with all three of the guys that picked that album. Next up, this album was chosen by, this was my number 3, and this album was also picked by Jimmy Brown from Deliverance, which he just talked about how amazing Dio was as a vocalist, and that's who this is. Dio, Holy Diver. This album was also picked by Robert Gutierrez of Ultimatum. Again, I was surprised by that. I knew he was a huge Dio fan. Would never have guessed it would have been his number 1 pick, but it was. So there you go, Holy Diver. It is a fantastic album. Much like Heaven and Hell, this is Dio reinventing himself. This doesn't sound like Black Sabbath. It sounds like Dio. He took a guy from the UK, I really think it was the UK, a guitar player from the UK, and made him famous. Of course, now he plays in Def Leppard, but just brilliant heavy metal, in my opinion. Every song on here is fun. You've got kind of anthem songs like Stand Up and Shout. You've got the hit single in the Rainbow in the Dark track. Holy Diver is just a heavy, nasty song, mid-paced. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, just everything you want in heavy metal is embodied on this particular album. Great bass playing too. You've got some fantastic bass work on here. I just can't think of anything I don't like about this album. So easily could have chosen the second album too. Both together, those two albums are brilliant in my opinion. And I actually got to see Dio on this tour with Twisted Sister opening up. They were on their You Can't Stop Rock and Roll tour at this a little club in Philadelphia called the Tower Theater. All right, number 2. This album was my number 2, also picked by 3 other people. Glenn Rogers, who is the guitar player for Hyrax. He's been in Heretic. He's been in Deliverance. He's been in a lot of well-known bands. He's a riff master. He does a lot of writing in the bands he's in. Primal, another band that he's been playing with. So anyhow, then also Rob Whitlock from Ultimatum. I said 2. That's the 3 people. There's only 2 people. Rob Whitlock from Ultimatum also picked this as his number 1. And oddly enough, this band got chosen quite a bit by some other people, but this particular album didn't get chosen as much. But to me, this one embodies heavy metal more than any other, and that is Iron Maiden, Killers. I mean, when you think heavy metal, traditional heavy metal, they're one of the first bands that come to mind for me, frankly. And I know a lot of people prefer the Bruce Dickinson years, and I love the Bruce Dickinson years, don't get me wrong, but this album was, I mean, this is the album I discovered this band on, you know. Went over to a friend's house, and he's like, and I was a huge Priest fan at the time, and I remember him telling me, "Oh, Iron Maiden blows Priest out of the water." And of course, at the time, early '80s, you know, this was a lot more aggressive than Priest was at the time. Priest had kind of simplified, dumbed down their sound. We're playing more of a new wave of British heavy metal sound, as opposed to the more complex music they were playing in the '70s. But this album was heavy, and it has a punk ethic to it. There's no punk music here whatsoever, but it has that kind of punk ethic to it. And I think that partially is because of the raspy, over-the-top vocals of Paul Di'Anno, which is very, very different from the more commercially acceptable, commercially viable vocals of Bruce Dickinson, who he's just a powerhouse, and no doubt about it, he's one of the greatest vocalists in metal as well. But I really like this album, and I think Paul Di'Anno embodied that heavy metal sound, especially that early '80s traditional metal sound. Again, you got the dual guitars. Maiden were one of the bands that perfected that sound. Adrian Smith and Dave Murray. You've got Clive Burr on drums, and of course the galloping bass of Steve Harris. Steve, one of the probably the most well-known bass players in heavy metal. Yeah, you just can't get more traditional heavy metal than Iron Maiden, Killers, in my opinion. And Glenn Rogers and Rob Whitlock agree with me. So there you go. All right, this next one, this is going to be my number 1. This was my number 1 pick. I've said this for years and years and years, that this particular album, if anybody was to say, what is the definition of heavy metal, I would hold this record up and say, this is it. Everything about it, from the cover art to the music, is heavy metal. And I had quite a few people agree with me on this one. I was actually surprised by how many people agree with me. So Roger Dale Martin from Vengeance Rising and Die Happy picked this as his number 1. Trog. You guys know Trog from my channel, but Trog also does a radio show called Stone Groove Records. Stone Groove is the name of his radio show, but also the name of his record company. And he also is the guitar player vocalist for Troglodyte Dawn, a doom band. Jim Willis, Guilty Forgiven on YouTube, picked this one. Tanner Poppet from Madrost picked this one as his favorite. And also Darren Hildebrandt, who you might know from YouTube. If you don't know him, look him up. And then Dwayne Stockton, a.k.a. Lazarus on YouTube, very well-known and respected metal guy on YouTube, picked this as well. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other people. 6 out of the 40 picked this album as their number 1. This is Judas Priest, Screaming for Vengeance. Is this my favorite Judas Priest album? No. I actually love the 70s material. But this album would definitely rank in my top 5 favorite Judas Priest album. And for traditional heavy metal, I just think this album represented like none other. Again, like many of the other ones, you've got the over-the-top vocals of Rob Halford. From from his mid-paced singing to his high-pitched screams, everything is just absolutely brilliant about it. You've got dual guitars. You've got Glenn and KK trading off licks and trading off leads. You've got fast songs. Yeah, mid-paced songs. You've got the moody songs. You've got that awesome intro in the Hellion, Electric Eye. You got the more moodier songs like "Take These Chains Off, Take Them Off of My Heart." This album's just brilliant. I mean, I doubt anybody doesn't know this one. But again, you almost got the speed metal of the title track. You've got the huge hit, and you've got Another Thing Coming, one of their most well-known songs. A song that I actually never tire of. I absolutely love that song. Fever, Devil's Child, Bloodstone, Pain and Pleasure, Riding on the Wind. This is classic Priest, and this album to me is #1 album that embodies traditional heavy metal. This is the definition of heavy metal. So there you go. That's my top 10 plus a few bonus albums that to me represent or define traditional heavy metal. Part 2 of this video is going to be 15 albums picked by other members or other people from other bands and other YouTube metal fans. So that's it. Appreciate y'all watching. God bless. Stay strong.